Good evening, America. I'm Jason, and this is Jason Goes Political. For the sake of continuity, all financial gifts under $19, $19 or less, I will read at the end of the show. Everything else, $20 or higher, I will read as soon as I see them. You may financially gift over at Entropy, which is up and working at 15% to you, Odyssey, which is up and working at 15% to you, Cash App, which is up and working at no percent to you. We are talking today about a new task force that was just created today by Biden and is contained also in a bill that was just passed today, although not yet signed by Joe. Great to see everybody here. I want to get started right away with the actual. Please let me know if you can hear me okay and if it's the right mic. And please share the URL so we can try to introduce some new people to the work we do here. And White House launches task force to tackle online harassment. Now, whenever the Democrats are busily creating bills and task forces and this sort of thing, it always comes with an abundance of flowery verbiage, of purple prose, because what they want to do is to convince you that there are, and particularly not you if you're a masculine white man, but all of the ladies out there and all of the effeminized men that are out there, they want to convince you that somebody's feelings are being hurt and that irreparable harm has been done to an individual here or there. They might cry, and if they cry, then all of the government should be used to abridge fundamental rights. And that's something that the Republicans, in their limitless ineptitude, have not talked about publicly, and they haven't gone after this, probably because so many of them are just feckless, and we have to hold their feet to the fire to get them to do anything whatsoever, and follow them after their promise, use their promises to haunt them for the totality of their time in office. That's what we should be doing. We should be demanding that they behave like men and women of the West. But they don't go out and tell the public, hey, this is going to be used to abridge these freedoms. And then what will happen to our society? What will happen to these individuals, even these particular ones whose feelings are hurt because someone online said something objectionable about their weight, about their sex, about what gender they think they are. Someone said something, and so therefore they and all the rest of us deserve to lose freedom of speech, right of assembly, etc. We need to be talking about this more often. And here we have White House launches task force to tackle online harassment. The task force is meant to address online abuse. Let me move this up a little bit. Tell me if the mic is fine, especially after I touch it, something goes weird. Please go crazy for me and let me know. Task force is meant to address online abuse, which disproportionately, and now here you have it. Here you have it. At the beginning there, this is over at CNET News. At the beginning there, it was sounding like, well, maybe this is just going to be everybody getting abused. But of course, it's not. You always see the qualifiers that come in after some sort of generalized term that is meant to hook you and manipulate you into thinking that we're just going to be dealing with all the bullies out there. No, you find out as you read what the bill is about that was just passed, and this task force just created by Joe writing a memorandum and swinging into action immediately, and is going to be affecting you directly if you are heretical to anti-white ideology, which is anti-whiteism. The Democrats are going to come for you. So you always see this qualifier, these qualifiers trail in afterwards, like just this hideous afterbirth in some demonic horror movie that we have to watch again and again for the totality of our lives, while we also forced to watch these mealy-mouthed, squiggly-spined losers who call themselves Republicans saying, well, we just don't know what to do, or I'm going to tweet something really brave about this, which is really nothing, and then I'll do nothing about it, as long as Hannity could have me on. And of course, we know now that Hannity, as a consequence of this investigation, Hannity was busily reaching out to Donald Trump while he was president, asking him to pardon Hunter Biden, because by doing so, that would be like this olive branch to the Democrats. And if you're nice to them, well, they'll just what, Hannity? You absolute brainless bitch. They'll just do what? He has been brainless since the day he has come up on the scene, hasn't he? This guy is so immensely stupid to reach out and say, pardon this drug using, and people are saying, I don't know if it's the case. I think it's probably not the case, that he's a total crack addict, pedophile, and rapist and all that. I don't think any of that's real. People are saying it, though. But of course, I don't think any of that's real. And I would never say that here on the internet, because it might be considered bullying to that guy, son of Joe. But here's the qualifiers, the afterbirth that the Democrats always give us with their ideology of anti-whiteism. Taskforce is meant to address online abuse, which disproportionately affects women, girls, people of color, LGBTQ+, everybody but white males. Every single person but white males. What does that mean? Who are the bad guys then? Who are the people that the government, the Democrats, have laid the crosshairs of government power, which is far more powerful than any hunting rifle or any handgun or any cannon or anything else you could get out there? The crosshairs of the federal government of the United States. This is what Democrats live for, this anti-white revolution that has motivated them from time immemorial. It's just insane. But let's get into it, because so many people just don't get it. President Joe is expected to sign a presidential memorandum, he already has, Thursday, that establishes a new task force to address online harassment and abuse. Online abuse disproportionately affects women, girls, people of color, LGBTQ+ individuals, everybody but white males. That means the bad guys. It is the anti-white narrative, folks. How many times do I got to tell you? This is what the Democrats practice, the anti-white narrative. That's their ideology. The bad guy in the anti-white narrative is white people in general and white males specifically. Those are the bad guys. And this is targeting them. It's the only group that has said not to get protection. The task force, and so who will they be going after, right? All the other groups are the protectorate. All the other groups of races and victimized groups, whatever they call themselves, they're all the protectorate, and there's only one left. Stop being a mealy-mouthed, squiggly-spine idiot and recognize that they are attacking you on the basis of your race if you are white. Task Force will give recommendations to government bodies, technology platforms, schools, and other groups and organizations on how they can combat online abuse and harassment. There isn't enough censorship. The big tech companies aren't doing enough to silence people who are heretical to the ideology of anti-whiteism. You see what's happening here? The abuse is merely disagreeing with somebody who's anti-white. You say you prove them wrong, their feelings are hurt, and therefore you have abused them. Are you going to elect another squiggly-spined Republican to stay in office or to go back into office? We need war heroes is what we need. We need Andrew Jacksons, all metaphorical, of course. We need people who are going to take the fight to the Democrats, not a bunch of people who are going, like Hannity, who are going to mealy-mouth and attempt to placate them and play fair. Be nice to them. Be nice to them, because then they'll be nice to you. Except that the totality of our lives, we have witnessed the bloodletting of by way of Democrat reciprocation. Yeah. So you do something nice, they cut your head off. You do something nice, they cut a couple of limbs off. You do something nice, they create another task force to cut your tongue out of your mouth and nail it to the front door of your house. So everyone will know you don't mess around with the Democrats and anti-whiteism. You see how this works? These recommendations will focus on things like providing support for survivors of online abuse, providing support for survivors of online abuse. You need to stop right there. Sit down. Breathe in the aroma, the fetid aroma of feces and rotting corpses, decaying corpses, because That is you, my friends. If they talk about these people as survivors of online abuse, they are survivors. That means they can do whatever they want to you on the other end as the victimizer. They are a survivor. You get into an argument with an anti-white online. You're not anti-white enough. You prove them wrong. They cry. They're now a survivor, and you are the person who made them a survivor. Again, have you not noticed the importance, as I'm talking here, of our practice, our concepts that we use to combat anti-whiteism, that we share in the book Go Free, that we share every Sunday on the Going Free shows at 5 p.m. Eastern time? You have to take up these concepts. You can't just talk about how we need concepts. I saw a wonderful clip the other day, people talking about how it's the contest is won with your own concepts. Yeah, I've been doing that for over 2 decades. So it's time to take off the blinders about who's out in front and accomplishing these things. Stop wringing your hands about it, and time to get on board, right? Let's do that before it's too late. Online survivors of surviving abuse. Expanding research is what they're also going to do. Research efforts to better understand how people are affected by online abuse. Okay, do you understand what that means for anti-whites, these Democrats? Do you understand what that means? They are going to put a bunch of these so-called like highbrow, erudite, overly educated individuals at numerous universities who really are just trained in sophistry. So that is deceptive reasoning and psychological warfare, and to get them to come up with a litany of all of the horror that is inflicted on an individual when they have to hear something other than anti-white ideology in their lives. If they have to see you out there waving your American flag, if they have to see you out there saying that you're proud to be a Christian or this is a Christian country, all of that contradicts the anti-white narrative. All of that contradicts anti-white ideology, the ideology of the Democrat Party and every Democrat voter. Well, if they have to see that, they're going to have a bunch of professors tell you how much it has internally damaged them, how the reason why they want to commit suicide, these massive rates of suicide and self-harm of these different groups that whether they're this gender or that gender, they're trying to figure out their gender. These groups, if you've ever looked through, pick up if you still live in a place where they create the yellow pages or any of the white pages where businesses can put their phone numbers and advertise for themselves. Jump on back to the psychology section, therapy section, and look at what the psychologists and therapists are marketing to, the different types of illnesses, the folks who are suffering with their illnesses. It is a bonanza of the lifestyles that anti-whiteism tells you is perfectly normal, is in fact is superior to normal. Maybe it is. I don't know on this channel. I don't know. The ear is against the door. But the anti-whites, the Democrats are telling us these lifestyles are superior. They are better than normal. They're super normal. They're ultra normal. And if you are not practicing them, well, then you damn well better bend a knee to them. You damn well better participate. If an individual says that he is a he or a she or a they one day and then something else the next day, then you damn well be able to turn on a dime and keep pace with them, even though the therapists for the past 40 years, go back and look online. I'm sure you can find the old advertisements of what therapists are targeting. Therapists are not targeting. I'm not even going to bother to tell you. You're going to look it up for yourself or just ask CNN, because I always watch CNN and MSNBC. They have the answers to everything. CBS a little bit, MSNBC, ABC as well. And then at the bottom of the list, Fox News. But CNN is the top of the list to find out. I noticed that psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, they're not marketing. They're not saying, are you a white male who is a blue collar worker or maybe low rung white collar worker, and therefore, and you're providing for your families, or you're trying to provide for, and therefore your life is in total shit. No, you don't see any advertisements like that. because they would never make enough money to feed themselves a jelly sandwich, a PB&J. They would never be able to afford if they were trying to get a bunch of ordinary white males turning the gears in the United States. Not the only people out there turning the gears, but in large measure, people turning the gears of this country. Those folks don't need therapy, although increasingly their need for therapy is there. They just don't realize it because they don't know until they come to us and learn about the concepts in Go Free that they're actually very ill. These ideas that they hold in their mind, they're very ill as a consequence of it. So if they knew they could get much better, as they are getting when they come and they take up the practice of Go Free, merely just using concepts that liberate you from this Democrat-dominated hegemony that we're forced to endure with their anti-white ideology, they learn that they can go free of those things and they can be stronger, they can be better people. But no, the therapists are out there targeting very different groups, and they actually list them. You can go right online. They ask, are you this person? Are you that person? And the Democrats would have you believe that all these people's lives are just ruinous and on fire, just these flaming wrecks because you have not participated. Maybe because you haven't dated them. Maybe the guy, I mean, we've seen these articles, haven't we? Where they say, oh, it's bigoted and it is the anti-white slur, racist to not date a woman who was born with a penis. You have to date her because if you don't, then her feelings are hurt and she's going to go self-harm and maybe kill herself. She's going to need therapy. You have to pay for that therapy. And if she ends up dying, well, it's your fault. So we're going to use the power of the federal government, the Democrats are, to rain hell on earth down on you. They want to get this. This is also what the task force is going to do. Democrat created task force, and Republicans, where are they? Did you hear the crickets? Did you hear crickets anywhere? Or was that the crickets? That's the sound of their tiny testicles bouncing between their legs as they run away from the Democrats. Your typical Republican today. A lot of people call him a rhino, but that's just about the party now. This is what the Democrats are going to do, folks, with the power of the federal government. Research efforts to better understand how people are affected by online abuse and how to hold people and platforms accountable. You hear that, Gab? And anywhere else? That is going to allow ideas that are heretical to anti-whiteism to be uttered. My God, freedom of thought, freedom of expression in the United States, speech, and therefore the ability to hear, that permitted? No. The federal government, the anti-whites, under the name of Democrat, are coming for you all. And is anybody talking about it? Are we the only people talking about it? I will keep you, as far as it will go, folks, out of jail. You stick with us and stop losing these people who keep coming back to me, and I'm not going to follow you again. If you get your account lost on Twitter, if you get your account lost on Facebook or these different places, you can follow me again all you want every time you get kicked off. But it's your dumb ass who keeps saying things that we teach you not to say because they come out of a view. They come out of a focus, and your focus is in the wrong place. You're saying ugly things because your focus is in an ugly place. And we teach that with the practice of going free. If you put your focus in the right place, look at how long I have been, and my face is out there. I've been only, I guess, frozen on Twitter maybe 2 or 3 times for like 24 hours. And I am out there as a persona for them to hate on. So if you every time you get rolling on Twitter or someplace else, you get your account busted, it's you. Not in every single case. Not in every single case. Maybe they got a thing out for you. But you damn well know when you look back. Most folks, I say, what were you doing? They write me, will you follow me again? No. What did you say? Oh, well, I just said that these people should have this done to them. Well, you're an idiot. So go free instead of that garbage and speak with love in your heart. Love, hope, and redemption. That's the only way we're going to recapture our destiny in this once united, proud states. Task Force members will include Secretary of State Blinken and Attorney General Merrick Garland, which is both of these guys are absolute tyrannical bastards. The launch of the task force just comes a few weeks after mass shootings in Buffalo, New York, and Uvalde, Texas. The alleged shooters in both incidents are believed to have engaged in abusive behavior online. You hear that? Abusive behavior online. The White House said the shootings, quote, underscore the connections between online harassment, hate, misogyny, and extremist acts. So these are just, never repeat this garbage. Those are just all anti-white slurs. Democrats love to throw around the anti-white slurs. And then very foolish Republicans and their supporters think that if they throw their anti-white slurs around as well, that they'll get some sort of reprieve from the Democrats. The Democrats are demons. What don't you get? All right, we're going to jump over. We're going to watch a video in a moment. We're going to mix it in. This is Harris and Garland Garland themselves talking about this new task force. But the task force actually comes from the bill. And it's interesting that Joe decided to, or he didn't. Come on, let's be serious. His brain is Swiss cheese. He's not deciding shit. He doesn't decide. He doesn't even decide when he's going to shit. They just change his diaper. So somebody decided for that walking corpse that he is going to sign a memorandum that is going to instantiate this new task force, this new anti-white task force, even though it's bound up in this bill that was just passed. And perhaps that's because Congress won't have an opportunity to evaluate this way. It'll probably have to be lawsuits. I mean, somebody could correct me on this, but Congress won't necessarily have an ability to evaluate what's being done by way of this memorandum, what's been created. So let's go ahead and have a look. I think I have it over here. And remember, if you have any questions or comments while we're together that you absolutely want answered or read otherwise, you can jump on over to Entropy, 15%, Odyssey, 15%, and Cash App, 0% of a charge to use. Otherwise, make sure you tag me as No White Guilt. Tag me as No White Guilt. And it looks like everything is up and running. Let me just open this, and I have it over here on this machine. So I'm going to have to turn this way to have a look. Otherwise, I haven't had an opportunity to see if what you all said about the audio, and I assume it's fine. So we can thank Kate for the notes on this demonic bill become law. This is this is called the, quote, white supremacy and Nazis. Oh, no, this is white supremacy and Nazis are mentioned all the way up to 17 times. I apologize for that. 70 times. The act is cited as Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act of 2022. So how are they referring to you? You want to go out there, you want to play the villain, you want to be an antag, which I think we should use more often, the antagonist in the anti-white story. Not our story. In our story, we're heroes. They're antagonists in our story. We live by our story, our concepts. In their story, if you want to be the antagonist in their story, well, then maybe we'll just refer to you as an antag. And you want to be an antag? Well, you're a terrorist. I'm talking about the views alone. You have an ugly focus. You want to be the bad guy in their story? Well, then that's what they're going to call you, a terrorist. So when they're talking about terrorism, domestic terrorism, and it's prevention, that is pre-crime talk, in my opinion. Of course, everything I'm saying here is for comedy purposes and my opinion. And I am potentially wrong. I'm probably wrong. So make sure you find out elsewhere about the truth of the matter. But to prevent terrorism in the United States, domestic terrorism in the United States, that means citizens of this country, not foreigners that have snuck in, because they're above the law, in my opinion. They're above the law. The people are below the law if you're white. And who are they talking about when they're talking about domestic terrorists? Well, they mention white supremacy and Nazis 17 times in a bill that is 17 pages long. Who else is telling you this throughout our sphere? Who else is mentioning that this just became your reality? And so you need to watch out. Well, I'm going to guarantee you what? Content leaders, thought leaders, organization leaders, they're not going to be talking about it very much, because we are the only group, this practice, we are the only collective of people engaged in a practice that is totally different from the concepts, the verbiage, the locutions, etc., that are used by the antags in the anti-white narrative. HR 350, sponsored by Representative Fred Upton, a anti-white bastard extraordinaire. Joining Upton, and Upton, the Democrat, introducing the bill is Representative Brad Schneider and Jerry Nadler and Brian Fitzpatrick and Robin Kelly, Don Bacon, let's see, Gonzalez, and Lou Correa. And then there's a companion bill that was led by Dick Durbin. This is out of the website, what I'm about to read to you, off of the website of Upton, the guy who sponsored the bill. Quote, the attack on the U.S. Capitol earlier this month was the latest example of domestic terrorism. You hear that? By the way, if you're new here, that day is called Patriots Day. I coined it, and we're all going to use it for all time. Patriots Day, when the patriot lost his innocence. You found out that the people's house didn't belong to the people anymore, that it had become a whorehouse. The attack on the U.S. Capitol earlier this month was the latest example of domestic terrorism, but the threat of domestic terrorism remains very real. We cannot turn a blind eye to it, close quote. That's on his website. The Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act will equip our law enforcement leaders with the tools needed to help keep our homes, families, and communities across the country safe. Poorly worded by the Democrat imbeciles over there, but I guess they don't mind. They hate everything Western, so I guess English will have to go eventually. Kowalski says, how could I help my future children go free? You have to get the book, Go Free. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at nowhitecollectibles.com. When you get it from there, you get a signed copy from me. You have to read and go free yourself. It's a practice. So you have to keep using the book. It's a workbook. And then you have to make it accessible to your children, depending upon whatever their age is. You have to inoculate them with the concepts used in Go Free so that they won't be white guilted, so that they won't hate themselves and hate America and hate liberty and hate the founding fathers, hate everything about this country. It's not enough to tell them that America was great and the founding fathers were great. And I had another message on a thread saying, you just have to have white babies and teach them to love our people and love our country. Bullshit. If that were the case, then we wouldn't be in the state that we're in now. I mean, think about it this way. America was much better off. All the Western countries were much better off further in back time that you go. The people were healthier. They were more homogenous. They had a better identity and sense of who they were and a destiny in the stars. It was in that environment, teaching them how great it is to be an American, teaching them how great it is to be a European, whatever it might be. It was in that environment that anti-whiteism defeated us. So don't recommend to me or to yourself or to friends that you just have to go back to what we were doing before, because before was beaten. That's like saying you build a dam, you build it a certain way, a certain tools, a certain design, a certain components, certain ingredients, and the dam fails, and you say, you know what we need to do? Build that exact same dam again. All the same ingredients, all the same building materials, all the same everything. No, for God's sake. You need to inoculate your children against this right now. When you teach them the concepts in Go Free, they go out into the world, they see anti-whiteism, the inoculation is empowered, and their faith in you and our people is strengthened. You got it? Thank you for asking the question. Ian T.D. Wilson said, Tucker Carlson, did I see that he used the term anti-white the other day? I did indeed. Clips, No White Guilt Clips, made a video of it. I shared it. It is fantastic. We need to keep pushing. If anything, we need Tucker Carlson. Whoever knows Tucker Carlson, we need Tucker Carlson to have me on. I have over 2 decades of public speaking, meetings, books written, live streaming, many thousands of hours of talking about my love for our people, my wanting for all people of all immutable characteristics to have wonderful lives. I am not the villain in the anti-white narrative. They can look through all of my material. He will not be harmed by anything in my past. He needs to have me on as soon as possible. I know he has a parade of non-white people on the show again and again because of this paternalistic patting on the head of every non-white person they can possibly come across, because they're trying to appeal to whom? The Democrats, who will never be kind to them, who will never be friendly to them, who will always move to cut their heads off. You cannot hold anti-white principles and think that Democrats are going to give you some sort of reprieve, some sort of pass, some sort of validation. That's not how it works. They hate you. They hate America. They hate Western civilization. And if you get in the way of any of that destruction, they will destroy you. That's why we need heroes to stand up. Andrew Jackson's. Let's continue with this. We don't have all night. Here's the bill, H.R. 350, to authorize dedicated domestic terrorism officers within the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice. So follow this. This is some scary shit. This is some eye-opening shit. To authorize, this is the bill that became law, to authorize dedicated domestic terrorism offices within the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the most criminal law enforcement agency in the history of the world, in my opinion, to analyze and monitor, that's you, domestic terrorist activities, and require the federal government to take steps to prevent domestic terrorism, to prevent it. So we already know to monitor domestic terrorists, to be a domestic terrorist by what they're saying here, and we'll play the video here shortly. We know what they mean by that. It is everybody but white males, everybody but white heterosexual males. Any white male, let's put it this way, any white male that is proud to be a Westman and is proud of America, proud of what our founding fathers did, proud of turning this wild wilderness into the most epic Western country on the history of the earth, the most powerful country ever on the history of planet Earth. You proud of that? You're excluded. You hold opinions at variance with anti-white ideology, the Democrats' ideology. You hold opinions with that are at variance, and you are a terrorist. So they're saying here, monitor the domestic terrorists, and then require the federal government to take steps to prevent domestic terrorism, to prevent domestic. So what kind of steps might they be? Well, showing up and maybe taking your right to self-defense away, maybe preemptively putting you into an insane asylum. We just had, where was I reading this? We just had in the federal government, they're talking about more money for psychiatric institutions. Most people don't realize that there were these two big away from psychiatric incarceration movements. I think one was maybe the 70s, and then one was the early 90s, maybe. And they emptied these institutions that were people that needed to be confined because they were batshit nuts. They were absolutely crazy, as you can. And I spoke with a lawyer in the county in which I live, right outside of Washington, D.C. I spoke with a lawyer who was defending these people, a public defendant, and he told me about some of the scariest things you could ever imagine. Turn your hair white. In fact, maybe some of the white hairs I have are a result of hearing the stories that he had to share. One of those stories was about a particular crazy guy. He showed up. He had to defend this guy, and I don't even know if it's. I don't know what the individual's particular ailment is, but this lawyer showed up and he had wrecked the room that he was in, being held in at the police station or wherever it was. He had pissed and I think made himself vomit on the floor and was laying in it and pretending or acting like he could swim in it. And so this attorney, he went in briefly, then had to have the deputies take him out because there was a threat to his life. 1 week later, he was at the mall at the eatery section and sat down with his wife to eat lunch, looked over, and 3 tables over or so was that guy. He got up and left. Well, now they're talking about giving more money. So what was the real purpose of putting these people back out on the streets? Well, maybe to make money off the medications. That would, but there had to be more to it than just that, the medications that they're on, because they could be on the medications inside the institutions. Maybe it was because people who are batshit nuts and are seeing things that aren't really there, having conversations with folks that aren't there, in any variety of things that could be wrong with an individual, that I am colloquially, since I'm not educated, I'm a lay person in the field of psychology and psychiatric medicine. So I'm just colloquially calling it crazy or batshit crazy or one of these sorts of terms, because I simply don't know. And I can't cite all of the different ailments that a person could have. But maybe it's because these people wreck things. Maybe it's because they hit people over the head with hammers and they'll grab a gun and go and shoot people. And they'll do these sorts of things that you can say, well, look at all the turmoil out there in this Western country. It's all because of white people. So we're going to have to just destroy this and remake everything. Maybe that had something to do with it. But they're talking now about more money and more incarceration. I wonder who's going to be getting incarcerated. Could it be these people who held opinions at variance with anti-whiteism? I'm telling you now, folks, you better take up the practice of go free. Start using our concepts, because this will put your focus in the right place so that your true love, your true duty will come through you in everything you do and say. And that is going to be the best way to keep you out of their sights, out of their gun sights, out of their incarceration sites. And you can begin, just as an aside, people who are behaving like antags and their groups, their organizations, their et cetera, are allowed to flourish. You better think hard, and they're not taken right to jail. Think hard about why the government, who has all of these tools in place and could easily just go and disappear every one of those people, why the government would want them there. And I suggest just have a little look over at Germany, for example. There's a big group there that's been allowed to exist for a very long time, and there have been scores and scores of arrests inside that group. Wonder what's going on there. It's a hard one to put together. DTPA would authorize 3 offices, and each within the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, the Department of Justice, DOJ, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, to monitor, investigate, and prosecute cases of domestic terrorism. So you're talking about the full weight of the federal government, the full weight of the United States government turning its crosshairs and laser precision guided bomb death hell from the sky on the American population, the white American population, and any good non-white people out there that say enough is enough with all of this anti-whiteism and these crazy Democrats. We've got to put an end to it. The bill also requires these offices to provide Congress with joint biannual reports assessing the state of domestic terrorism threats with a specific focus on white supremacists. What's a white supremacist? Any white person who isn't anti-white enough. That's a white supremacist. So you think you're going to get away with, most of my friends are not, and I will vote for any non-white person that runs for office who's a Republican, and I will just. You think you're going to get away with that? I'm afraid not. Unless you want the white race in America to be destroyed as quickly as possible, you are a white supremacist, according to the Democrats. Based on the data collected, DTPA requires these offices to focus their resources on the most significant threats, which is you, my friend. You better start going free, and you better start supporting and demanding Republicans in office that are actually going to fight this, and not these retarduses that are out there. You know the TARDIS, the thing that flies around, phone booth? These are retarduses. So the thing doesn't even work properly. These people, every single one of them, I mean, they are comical. Why do you keep voting for these Muppets? It's like this country in America, you keep voting for the most squiggly spined, effeminate white males or non-white males, or you jump over to the retarduses. You need heroes. You need genuine heroes. 3 agencies that enforce the legislation from the bill, ladies and gentlemen, become law. Domestic Terrorism Unit. There is authorized a Domestic Terrorism Unit in the Office of Intelligence and Analysis of the Department of Homeland Security, which shall be responsible for monitoring and analyzing domestic terrorism activity. So you worried about, I'm just going to be a little edgy over on this platform because maybe I can get away with it. Maybe the people at the platform will figure it out, and then I'll have to get a new burner phone to get another account there. No, my friends. No, you see, they're going to start watching you, the federal government, in my opinion, of course. Read the law for yourself. They're going to start watching you if you want to act like an antag. You want to be an antagonist in their story? They're going to be monitoring you. You better go free. You're running out of time. I ask you, what other leaders, thought leaders, content creators, organization leaders are warning you about this? You know, if that shaming gets through and they all start talking about it, good. Because if they don't, a lot of good people are going to have their lives ruined. 2, Domestic Terrorism Office. There is authorized a Domestic Terrorism Office in the Counterterrorism section of the National Security Division of the Department of Justice. Can you imagine these bizarre kangaroo courts and the sort of cases that prosecutors are going to be bringing to these courts? I can see it now. I can see like some like 17-year-old incel groiper who just like to get online and like to say foxtrot to all women out there and whatever else they might be saying, maybe making some statements about Israel or something like this, and then that aren't productive statements, but are destructive statements. And then they get arrested by these newly uniformed weird troopers that come, anti-white troopers that come to their homes, and then haul them before these bizarre courts with bizarre charges. And well, we're just going to detain him for the next 8 to 11 months or so, and see if he's crazy enough that we need to detain him forever. And then they'll just take you in there and give you shots of who knows what, vitamin shots. In my opinion, this is all just something I'm making up. A, which shall be responsible for investigating and prosecuting incidents of domestic terrorism. What will be an incident considered an incident of domestic terrorism? Is it something that is, if we just look back here, is it something that creates survivors? Because we know from what they're writing that a person is made anybody other than a white, heterosexual, proud American can end up a survivor if they have to witness you holding opinions that contradict anti-whiteism, that contradict the Democrats in office. Right? You got to put these things together, folks. And if you can, I'm doing it for you. B, which shall be headed by the Domestic Terrorism Council. And then we have 3, domestic terrorism section of the FBI. There is authorized a domestic terrorism section within the counterterrorism division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which shall be responsible for investigating domestic terrorism activity. And by the way, they are creating here increased, let me see if I can just find the message here from Kate, increased information sharing when it comes to almost entirely white, but also patriotic, proud, non-white people in the United States. Increased communication between these different entities so they can really collaborate and cooperate in coming after you and destroying you. And then they said this, in addition, Joe, the corpse in chief, noted the arrest of more than 24 members of a white supremacist group who were near a northern Idaho pride. So that means homosexual, just everything but heterosexual pride event over the weekend. Quote, "They're disgusting," the corpse in chief said. He said they're disgusting of the attacks. What did I tell you? Did these 31 even make it to the satanic church organized everything but heterosexual parade? Did they even get there? No, they didn't even get there. But here they say an attack on LGBTQ people. And the corpse in chief says they have to stop. I mean, this guy is so decrepit. We're starting to be able to see his organs through that flesh that's just barely hanging on that body. I mean, it's to the point now, of course, where these even Democrats are saying, they're now starting to worry that he's going to end up saying something really challenging for them to have to say, well, he doesn't actually mean that this way. Act and each, let me see, not later than biannual report required, not later than 180 days after the date of enforcement. I'm going to jump down through this because it's 17 pages long. I don't have 17 hours here. I do want to watch a little bit of the speech so you can see this so-called vice president cackling prostitute talk, and also Merrick, the little demon. Looks, he absolutely is a gargoyle, that guy. He absolutely is. And I mean that in the nicest way. I don't want to make him a survivor. Let's jump down to this. We'll jump to these particular passages where they're talking about you if you object to anti-white ideology. An assessment, the contents each report submitted under paragraph 1 shall include an assessment of the domestic terrorism threat posed by white supremacists and neo-Nazis, including white supremacist and neo-Nazi infiltration of the federal government, state, and law enforcement agencies, and the uniformed services. So what does that mean? That means that they are going to go through and purge all of these institutions, not for white supremacists, neo-Nazis or what have you. Those are just the names for white people who are not anti-white enough. No, they're going to get rid of every white person in the government, in the military, in federal, state, and local law enforcement, in all uniformed services in this country. They're going to go through and get rid of every single white person who isn't fanatically anti-white and wants to just victimize white people and destroy Western civilization. That's what they're looking for. They already have had, as soon as Joe got in, massive purges of the federal government, just going through and saying, hey, if there's anybody who could potentially have a positive thought about something we have deemed evil as Democrats with our anti-white ideology, then we have to burn that. And what we want to burn down, we have to burn them down as well. B, here's in the first report, analysis of incidents or attempted incidents of domestic terrorism that have occurred in the United States since 1995, including any white supremacist related incidents or attempted incidents. So why would they want to go back to April 19, 1995? And because they're giving you their history. This is the rewriting of history. This is going to be there is mountains. We have a Brobdingnagian problem here. And so that's going to require a severe Brobdingnagian solution, my friends. Look at all of these incidents of white people not being anti-white enough. Well, you don't have enough? Well, then just go ahead and fictionalize reality like we talked about the other day, ladies and gentlemen. In subsequent reports and analysis of incidents or attempted incidents of domestic terrorism that occurred in the United States during the preceding 6 months, including any white supremacist-related incidents or attempted incidents, and it's just all about white people who are not anti-white. This is what the whole thing is. Every category has a special designation for white supremacism. What else are they looking at? An assessment can be classified as any person or incident the investigating agency assesses as potential incident. It does not have to turn into an investigation or incident to be added to the reports. Could be as simple as an incident such as a verbal exchange. So somebody could have a verbal exchange, not a physical exchange. They just could have had some words, and they are going to jot that down as another act of terrorism, white supremacist domestic terrorism in the United States. Look at all of these acts, and all of that is going to require a big solution, a severe solution. You better go free. I'm going to tell you right now. I've been telling folks for years, people keep going to jail. People keep having their lives ruined. People are giving testimonies how they lost job, lost family members, lost girlfriend, lost boyfriend, lost everything because they're not going free. They go free. Everything changes in their lives. Well, it's getting even more severe. I've been talking about it for a long time. You're going to jail. Increasingly, you're going to jail. And in the different organization leaders, content creators, thought leaders that are telling you that guy that guy Jason over there at CUNA is a dumbass. Don't listen to anything he has to say. Don't you know that he is a fill in the blank with something horrible, so you won't come listen to me? Think about that for a minute. Who would tell you that? I'm giving you the tools to actively work for the recapture of our destiny and the making America great again. I'm giving you the tools to do that, even in the environment that Democrats are creating, motivated by their anti-white ideology. And there are people out there telling you, don't listen to what we have to say. Are you nuts? You know, people only get hate like that when they're over the target, when they're right. Domestic terrorism related to assessments initiated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, including the number of assessments from each classification and subcategories with a specific classification on subcategory for those related to white supremacism. Domestic terrorism related primarily investigations initiated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, including the number of preliminary investigations from each classification and subcategory with a specific classification or subcategory for those related to white supremacism. I'm just jumping down. This is the law. You can read this yourself. I'm just trying to drive the point home. How sick is it that others in the sphere have not been worried about your well-being. Domestic terrorism related to full investigations initiated by the federal bureau. Okay, specific classification subcategory, another white supremacist. Domestic terrorism related incidents, including the number of incidents of each classification subcategory, with a specific classification subcategory for those related to white supremacism. So Roman numeral 3, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, again and again. They are enumerating. There will be these departments, there will be these special reports, there will be when these reports will be presented, and these will be the special. They're not saying anything about black supremacism or Hispanic supremacism or Asian supremacism or Jewish supremacism or Arab supremacism. It's all about white people that are not anti-white enough. And wanted to point out here the creation of a connection between what is called a hate crime and domestic acts of terror. So in their verbiage here in this bill, they wed a connection between a hate crime and a domestic act of terror. Read it for yourself if you don't think it's right, or you can wait for CNN to tell you what it says. Maybe you should just wait for CNN to tell you. I'm just sharing my opinion on the reading here. And so there might be other opinions. Make sure you get it from all angles. Let's see. This is number 3, hate crimes. In compiling a joint report under the subsection of domestic terrorism, office authorized under paragraphs 1, 2, 3 of the subsection A shall, in consultation with the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice and the Civil Rights Unit of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, review each hate crime incident reported during the preceding 6 months to determine whether the incident also constitutes a domestic terrorism related incident. A domestic terrorism related incident. What otherwise, until that point, had been a hate crime, which would, of course, be time tacked on if there was a law broken, what have no, now it's taking it to the next level. So we're going to jump through. Let's see. Ensure an effective response, organized joint effort to combat domestic terrorism. Quote, the greatest threats, close quote, will be a focus on, quote, white supremacy and related hate crime due to the way the data is going to be collected. So they're going to be collecting all of this data to make it look like there is just this endless, just blood-curdling, bloodletting, like slaughtering cattle of terrorism, domestic terrorism, committed by white people. And when you hear terrorism, you're probably thinking something that like Arabs or Jews do in the Middle East. But instead, when they say terrorism, they mean white people who are not anti-white enough, who are objecting to what's happening here. Reference the most significant threat is determined to be the handpicked data, which will show the preferred focus on, quote, white supremacy as the, quote, most significant threat. Jump down a little bit further. Terrorism program that is fueled by the Bureau of Justice Assistance and Department of Justice, and ensure that such programs include training and resources to assess state, local, and tribal law enforcement agencies in understanding, detecting, deterring, and investigating acts of domestic terrorism and white supremacist and neo-Nazi infiltration of law enforcement and corrections agencies. Jump down again. Section 5. Interagency task force. Not in general, it says under A, not later than 180 days. Not later than 180 days after the date of enactment of this act, the Attorney General, the Director, the Secretary, and the Secretary of Defense shall establish an interagency task force to analyze and combat white supremacist and neo-Nazi infiltration of the uniformed services and federal law enforcement agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, once they are done going through, making sure, or while they are going through and purging every single white person. So many white people thought, do you remember those idiots that said, oh, the government, the military will just side with us? As they're purging everyone in all of these uniformed agencies, what do you think will be left in there? What will they do to you when they're ordered to do to you what the Democrats want them to do? Or even what these mealy-mouthed, squiggly-spined Republicans or traitor Republicans order them to do to you? What do you think they're going to do? Whatever they want them to do. And it'll be done with extreme brutality because you, as somebody who objects to anti-whiteism, are dehumanized. Your life has no value in this system, in this anti-white narrative. We're going to stop there. And I will say that all financial gifts, $19 or under, will be read, for sake of continuity, be read at the end, which is coming up soon. Everything above will be read as soon as I see it. And I'm taking a look at these places right now. Online storage over there on Odyssey says Hannity is a super toady for Israel. Yeah, he is. He absolutely sits on their laps, and you know it because he's got a big smile since their hand is so far up his ass. But it's otherwise. Somebody is saying that Hannity is Jewish and Slavic. Is that right? Or are they talking about somebody else? Hello to everybody on all these platforms. Remember, tag me as No White Guilt if you want to get my attention. And we do have a financial gift that I will get to as soon as we reach the end. But quickly, we're going to take a look at this. And this is from White House, the White House itself. So hopefully they're not going to take the stream down for me sharing this. But we're going to do this quickly. And I'm going to also change the speed. And let me know if you can hear everything okay.
That individual should not be made to fight alone. A harm against her, against him, against them is a harm against all of us as a society. And so it is with that spirit that we are doing the work we are doing today to convene and to inaugurate this task force.
Okay, she's talking about the task force. That is a part of the bill become law that I was just reading to you. But the corpse in chief, who is having organs leak through his flesh at this point, of course, that's my opinion. I mean, doctors might be able to tell you something different about that. But he immediately wrote a memorandum, and they began the process of the task force even before this bill made law now would have enabled them to do the exact same thing.
Understanding this affects all of us, if it affects any one of us. And we, therefore, all of us have a responsibility.
What? Sorry, let me just.
If it affects any one of us. And we, therefore, all of us have a responsibility.
My God. She is so painful to listen to. We, all of us. That is a horrible retardus redundancy. That is a retardus redundancy. And you notice here she says individual, he, she, or what, they or them. What did she say? She says that today, but that won't be anti-white enough 5 years from now. No, it's going to have to. So she will actually be not anti-white enough 5 years from now, because to be anti-white, to destroy America, to destroy Western civilization, to inflict injury on Western kind, man, woman, and child, you have to be anti-white enough for all time. And 5 years from now, the strictures for anti-whiteism, the precepts are going to be much more onerous than they are today. So she's going to have to say she, he, and maybe they'll just get rid of the he's, but she, he, them, they, and then maybe 2 or 3 other, 4 or 5 more that she's not saying today.
To stand together, to support those who have gone through this, but to also recognize they shouldn't have.
Is this loud enough for you all? Can you all hear it okay? Let me take a look at YouTube might tell me that I have to stop playing this, but we'll see while we're live. Can you all hear her okay? Hear me okay?
To be alone fighting on this issue. So that's the spirit with which we convene today.
Look at the woman doing the sign language. I mean, that is sign language. That is sassy sign language. Look at her.
And
let's go back.
Look at her. Alone fighting.
Look at her. She's like.
So that's the spirit with which we convene today.
She's like, honey, screw that shit. That's what she just signed.
And the spirit with which we are doing this work. And I will tell you, as Attorney General, many of you know when I was in California, I prosecuted the first case in the country of an operator of a cyber exploitation.
We'll jump by this.
And I flew down.
We'll jump up to where she starts talking again about.
It exists.
I think it's.
The photo.
So she's just talking about a case that she prosecuted, which she
behaviors that harm others.
She didn't do, she didn't do a whole lot. I mean, it's just like working on a straw with your beverage of choice, milkshake or whatever, sort of more milkshakey, like a vanilla milkshake.
The human beings. But this kind of justice is still so rare because many of our laws have not caught up with the advances in technology. So as a United States Senator, I introduced legislation to make these acts a federal crime. And thanks to the recent, and our president, Joe Biden, and the recent reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, for the first time, cyber exploitation victims can sue their abusers in federal civil court.
Okay, so you can now be sued in federal court, I guess. Is it just for sharing dirty pictures of the person you were with, or?
And this is progress. Can sue their abuser. Recent reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. For the first time, cyber exploitation victims can sue their abusers in federal civil court.
Okay, so ultimately what it means is disagree with a woman, and on one of her bad days, which is like 3 weeks out of every month, instead of it being the 1 week thing, piss off a woman and she could sue you in federal court. That's not what it's actually. I'm just giving you the vaudeville version. But
this is progress.
It's progress. Yes. It's progress now that we can destroy men of all races, but particularly, of course, white males. She's the only woman, maybe the only person, I think, that can be so dim-witted. I mean, look at her there. That's a perfect, picture of what's really going on in her head. I mean, that's how dumb this woman is, but can be this dumb and also patronizing and condescending at the same time.
We still have so much more work to do to protect people from online harassment and abuse, which is why the work of this task force is so important. Context. Well, the internet is an essential part of life in the 21st century. Can't get around it. Can't get around without it.
Wow. I think she's writing her own speeches.
And for far too many people, and Sloan told her story, the internet is a place of fear. 1 in 3 women under the age of 35 report being sexually harassed online.
Now, I have to ask, since we got a sassy sign language going on, if Kamala gets real bent out of shape, starts shouting, will the sassy sign language lady maybe pick up her chair and throw it at the camera? I mean, what are the signs for really pissed off emotion?
Over half of the LGBTQ plus people in our country are survivors of severe harassment.
There you have it. They're survivors of severe harassment, people disagreeing with them severely. When I mean, it's still to this day, and I'm a white male, so nobody cares. I'm out there, my face is out there. I receive death threats every single month. I have received, especially in the beginning, when people thought it was going to bother me, saying how ugly I was. It was endless. It was endless. They talked about my nose. They talked about my lips, talked about my eyes. They talked about my hair. They talked endlessly. I've had threats made to murder my parents, threats. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. None of these anti-whites care. So if you disagree with an anti-white out there, could you imagine, and you all have experienced this now, you have people in your life who are Democrats and Maybe they are. Maybe they are homosexual or omnisexual or plant sexual, or I don't know all the different. Again, I don't know. You'll have to educate me. I don't know. You can't punish me where I'm just lacking the education of all the different names for these things. But you have this person and person in your life, and we're entering a phase where merely to disagree with them is to make them a survivor. Merely to disagree with them on what should be done with the country, nothing to do with their sexuality whatsoever, but to disagree with the way the country should operate, what we should accept, what should be considered normal, what, should we look at the lessons from the past, things that enabled society to function? Should we look at that? No, you are disagreeing with the anti-white, and now they're going to go and pick up the phone to the local law enforcement, state law enforcement, FBI, and this person, I felt intimidated. I felt, on the basis of my sexuality, I felt intimidated because they were very aggressive with me. And here is Kamala, briefly with her mouth off the microphones, and I don't know how they keep her up. They probably have like a cattle prod back there. Or they send the electricity through the microphones to keep her mouth off the microphones. Can you imagine? She probably salivated when she first walked out and saw two of them side by side. And she's saying, this is the way it should be.
Only 1 in 4 Asian Americans report being called an offensive name.
Okay, so she just said all of the different sexualities except for heterosexuality. And now she said Asians.
Usually motivated by racism, being called an offensive name online. And Black people who have been harassed online in our country are 3 times more likely to be targeted, again, because of their race.
She just screwed up. Black people who have been targeted are 3 times more likely to be harassed online. I think she wanted to say that Blacks are that many more times likely to be harassed online. But I call bullshit on it. I mean, this is their advocacy research, and they take your tax dollars, they create the organization that's going to research something for them that or they'll pay tax dollars to a university, or some wealthy Democrat will pay some dollars to a university, and they'll say, well, we want to pass this law in the next 18 months. So we're going to do this research now to get the outcomes we want. And then when we put forward this bill, we will cite this research that we paid for 18 months earlier. And it's so obvious that this is how this operates. And the Republicans, I'm telling you, you need Andrew Jacksons, because you have these people, these Democrats, and they've created anti-whiteism. Democrats have created an environment in the United States that lends itself to this squalid, immoral wretchedness, where people they put no value on life, and truly psychotic people that need to be helped and that need to be incarcerated for their good and our good. Those people are out wandering the streets. They're able to look out into, would you have the guy a handful of years ago that dressed up like the Joker? I mean, people are looking out there like this guy in Buffalo, and they're scum, they're dirt, they're evil, and they should be incarcerated. And instead, they're out on the streets. They're looking for the villain to play in a movie or in the anti-white narrative or whatever it might be. And then they go and hurt people. And every single time they do it, the Democrats are there saying we have to take more of the God-given liberties away from the population to make you safe. Every single time. Republicans, they're not going to survive, and our people are not going to survive. This country's not going to survive unless they go on the offensive when it comes to this garbage.
No one should have to endure abuse just because they are attempting to participate in society.
Well, I'm attempting to participate, and I've received endless abuse. She's such a sanctimonious bitch. Look, she's getting ready there, right there. She is on the verge of tipping over at the waist. You know it.
Of course, the impact of this abuse extends beyond the ability to use the internet system and the power of the internet without fear. It's beyond that. In many cases, cyberstalking have serious mental health consequences for...
There you have it. So the people coming around saying horrible things to me, having serious psychological, spiritual effects on me, but they're not going to go to jail because I'm a white male. Are you out there? You disagree? Like I disagreed with, and I demonstrated pure evil out of this Hassan Piker guy. Pure evil. I showed how evil he was. How much he just wants absolutely to victimize Western kind, white babies. They're all guilty of all harm, of all tears, of any other race of people for all time. I show that. Well, I'm going to have, under this, maybe I'm going to have severely harmed him psychologically, and the FBI is going to knock on the door.
Its victims, sometimes leading to self-harm, sometimes leading to suicide.
It's leading to self-harm and suicide. Once again, these communities, all I say is you go and look at who the people, what therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, who they've been targeting for their money for decade upon decade upon decade. When these people, when there was no such thing as a omniplant sexual person or whatever, all of the different things that are out there now, all of like the genuine things, or omnisexual or bisexual, the society wasn't talking about. There was nobody to make fun of these people because nobody openly said, yes, I'd like to, and then filled in that blank with, dress up like a kitty cat and have sex or whatever it is. Nobody said that. So nobody was making fun of people who were living like that, right? But the therapists were still talking to these people and making their money off of them. They weren't paying for the new pool in the backyard with that blue collar guy who used to put shingles on the roof, doesn't anymore, because now there are people of a much smaller stature and who do the job for half, because where they came from, half is double.
Some acts of mass violence, the most recent included, have followed expressions of online hate and abuse. The white supremacist who murdered 10 Black people in Buffalo, New York,
there you
was
have
first radicalized, by all accounts, online. And after the massacre of 19 children, 19 babies, and 2 teachers in Uvalde, it was revealed that the shooter had threatened to kidnap, rape, and kill teenage girls on Instagram.
So anybody, any crazy person or any individual, even if they're not crazy, I don't know what they could be motivated by, just maybe they're possessed by demons. I don't know. Maybe they are, who knows? Maybe an individual, let's just take for a moment, an individual was like horribly abused by his mother, beaten and maybe sexually abused by his mother. And then even though he might not be textbook loony, he has this absolute hatred, irrational hatred for all women. If he goes out and kills people with a hammer, do I lose, or kills people with a drill, say? I mean, do I lose my right to buy a drill, Black & Decker, or do I lose that all of a sudden? Is that legitimate? That's ridiculous. And that's what these people, that's how they need to be combated.
One of the girls he harassed described the abuse, I quote, as just how online is.
Oh, it's just how online. Well, don't worry, because the Democrats are going to get online, and they're going to make sure that if you are one of these victim groups, in other words, if you're not a heterosexual white male who loves the country and who takes pride in being a member of Western kind, a Westman, the Democrats are going to be there to make sure that your life is ruined if you disagree with any of those cupcakes out there.
Now, just think about this. In states where abortion is criminalized, an abuser could purchase a woman's location history through a data broker. This is a realistic scenario. If that history shows that she sought an abortion out of state, he could then turn it over.
Well, this is what they're doing. They want to move against the states that are saying they want to curtail abortion to some degree after the Supreme Court renders its judgment.
Will use their private personal data, or that a person's private personal data will be used against them. And all people deserve to use the internet free from fear.
No, this
task force then will tackle a threat that has been far too.
This task force. She just said that everybody should be able to go on the internet and not be bothered by anybody else at all. Because to be bothered is to be made a survivor. So long as you're not a white person who loves Western civilization, loves America, right? But think about this, how feminine this and the angle of attack, of course, is by way of these feminine pretexts. the internet should be made super safe. Of course, we know it's not super safe. It's not going to be super safe for guys like me. It's not going to be super safe for every white person out there that's not anti-white enough, male or female. But they're going to go in there and they're going to make sure that it's cuddly and safe and warm for all the cupcakes so that no one will ever disagree with them for fear of going to prison.
This task force then will tackle a threat that has been far too real for far too many people for far too long. And the recommendations of this group and the extended group of experts and those who have been advocates in this space for so long.
Sassy. She is sassy with that sign language. I want her to come do my sign, sign for me. Where do you hire her? And she's sassy.
The collective work will help modernize the federal government's response.
Is she signing with an accent? And if so, what accent might that be? Probably Australian. Yeah.
To violence against women and people of all genders. It will lead to more evidence-informed policies and
women and all people of all genders, except white guys.
More federal funding to address online harassment and abuse, including grants to train law enforcement.
All this money is your tax dollars. They're stealing from you to victimize you. Do you want to continue to vote in mealy-mouthed Republicans or rhino Republicans? You need warriors. I tell you what, if I were in office, this little conference here would get disrupted.
And prosecutors. It is incumbent on all of us, government, local law enforcement, and the tech sector, to respond to the task at hand with a sense of urgency. So I thank you all for your tireless fight and for your advocacy, for your strength.
Okay, come on, just shut up.
Look forward to hearing all of your recommendations.
Okay, we're going to get on to this, the little gargoyle next. I actually, years ago, I had it. There he is.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, for convening this important meeting and for telling me where to stand. Thanks to Sloan Stevens, Matthew Herrick, Francesca Rossi, Marianne Franks, Carrie Goldberg.
Come on. Boy, listen to this.
And Melissa.
Look at this list.
For being with us today to share your experiences.
The list of names that he's reading off there.
Inform our work in the days ahead.
I could make another joke.
Difficult to investigate.
Not doing it.
They inflict devastating and long-lasting harm.
Okay, look.
Easy to commit. Online criminal harassment and abuse.
Online criminal harassment
are serious offenses. They are easy to commit and often difficult to investigate. And they inflict devastating and long-lasting harm on victims who are disproportionately women, children, and young adults, and members of the LGBTQ plus community.
Okay, so again, if you can't be the victim and they are the victims, somebody out there needs to be the victimizer. Do the math.
Preventing and addressing online criminal harassment and abuse requires a whole of government approach.
I want to have this sassy sign lady come with me everywhere I go so that she's like right there. And they're like, who's that? That's my sign language lady. Don't get me bent out of shape because she'll get real sassy and might whoop your ass.
And that is why the Department of Justice is eager to take its role, take part in the critical work of this task force. Today, I'd like to briefly outline 3 areas of focus for the Justice Department. First, we are expanding our capacity to prevent online criminal harassment and abuse. Our Office of Violence Against Women is using every resource at its disposal to combat cyberstalking and misuse of technology by abusers, including through its stalking, prevention, awareness, and resource center.
Of course, it goes without saying, but I got to say, because of the liars will say otherwise, that actual criminal activity, like actually stalking and harming, or the laws that are already on the books, they should be enforced for what everyone, not this anti-white garbage, but I mean, rape and murder and actual harassment and all of that. Those laws should just be enforced. You don't need this. All of this is obfuscation to victimize Western kind.
Which provides education and training at the local, regional, statewide, and national levels. OVW has also
training is more of these anti-white obedience classes.
Funded important work that is underway to collect nationally representative data on cyberstalking in the United States. This data will help us assess the scope and the nature of these crimes, as well as determine survivors' access to services and any unmet needs.
That's exactly what we were talking about, the data and how that data is going to be collected and what they're focusing on. It's white people who aren't anti-white enough.
We look forward to sharing the report and its findings, which will be published later this year.
Shit.
In addition, thanks to the 2020 VAWA reauthorization, the department has begun work to establish and maintain a national resource center on cyber crimes against individuals, which will provide resources, training, and technical assistance to prevent, enforce, and prosecute cyber crimes against.
And we're talking about the cyber crimes. Again, your average person is going to be thinking that something significant has been done there, rather than that they've been made survivors because their feelings were hurt.
Those cyber crimes include the use of technology to harass, threaten, stalk, and extort.
Okay, the use of technology. That's a cell phone to make a phone call. That is a text message. That is a DM. That is just the thread underneath somebody's Twitter post. That is everything that technology is used for.
As well as the non-consensual distribution of intimate images. The department has also requested $10 million for grant programs authorized under VAWA for states, Indian tribes, and local governments to step up their own efforts to prevent and respond to cybercrimes. Second, we are expanding our capacity to prosecute online criminal harassment and abuse. Our 94 United States attorneys' offices across the country, with the support of our criminal division, are working in partnership with law enforcement at all levels
of course,
to successfully prosecute these cases.
Successfully
OVW grant
prosecute
programs-
these cases. That's what he's after. This guy, he is the most politicized in that position ever, I think, in the history of America. I mean, he is a hardcore Democrat that wants to just crush everything that isn't anti-white.
Supports specialized training for law enforcement partners to identify, investigate, and bring cyber stalking cases and provide survivor-centered services.
You know, you get none of this when it comes to the Republicans. None of it. When Trump got in office, if he was serious, or when the Andrew Jacksons that we need get into office, they need to just fire everyone. Fire everyone, and then it doesn't matter who you replace them with. It's as long as they are loyal to America and they're not putting up with any shit from anti-whites.
And in the months ahead, the Justice Department will implement important provisions from VAWA aimed at improving our enforcement efforts. First, the FBI director will design and create within the Uniform Crime Reports a category for offenses that constitute cybercrimes against individuals. We will publish an annual report on this information and all the information.
So everything that I was
to
reading
further
to you,
inform our enforcement efforts.
this demon is
In addition,
talking
the
about
department
here.
will develop and implement a comprehensive strategy to reduce the incidence of these cybercrimes, to coordinate investigations of these cybercrimes,
Reduce
by
the
federal law enforcement agencies,
incidence.
to increase the number of federal prosecutions of these cybercrimes, and to develop an evaluation process that measures rates of cybercrime victimization and prosecutorial rates among tribal and culturally specific communities. Finally, we are expanding our capacity to protect.
And this is the
support
misdirection with
survivors
the
of these
pretexts.
crimes. The Office of Victims of Crime will award $3 million to victim services organizations through the Advancing the Use of Technology to Assist Victims of Crime program. This program will support initiatives that use technology to increase access to services and information about victims' rights, enhance service providers' understanding of technology-facilitated gender-based violence,
Yep.
and strengthen the response.
Are you ready?
Victim services.
Are you ready to have your YouTube or your Twitter, or whatever it might be, saying, per the federal government guidelines, you are now unpersoned? You ready for that?
Organizations supporting survivors of this type of violence. The experience of online criminal harassment and abuse are often much more than a single incident or moment in time. Online criminal harassment and abuse can be life-altering and sometimes life-shattering.
Again, this is the misdirection, making it sound like, well, we're only concerned when someone is being vexed by a stalker for like year after year after year. That's, you read the rest of it, we read in the rest of it. It has nothing to do with that. This is the smoke and mirrors.
Which endures long after the crime has occurred.
Endures
We are
long,
committed-
so they're suffering for a long time. So therefore, that justifies 100 years in prison for you.
To relentlessly investigating these crimes, bringing to justice those who perpetrate them, and providing support for the survivors. Thank you all for your attention to the task. We look forward to our shared work in the days ahead.
Okay. The shared work in the days ahead. What a bastard. Let me see what you all are saying now, and we're going to be wrapping up. It looks like our first financial gift was over here on Entropy, and it was from the one and only Rory, the gentleman Herbert. Thank you, good brother. A $3 financial gift. He says, Dear Jason, could we please have some prayers and first and ones in the chat for Carlisle Cockatoo's swift recovery from her current illness? Yes, folks. Again, she is recovering, and so some prayers and positive energy, and she will be some ones in the live chat, please, for Carlisle Cockatoo. Thank you. And thank you for that, Rory. Over here on Cash App, we have, let me grab this and see. How is the lighting okay in here? Is it working? Still working on the studio. We're trying to make it work, implementing all kinds of ideas. But over here, we have the great No White Guilt Clips, one of our truest champions of all, $10 financial gift. God bless you, brother. I mean, you're a real stand-up guy. $10 financial gift. He says, thank you for the intel. Well, you are most welcome, and thank you for appreciating it. Here we have Art Acrobats. Thank you for giving me a key there, brother, to remember exactly who you are here. $2.99 financial gift. Thank you so much. He says here, for knee pads for Kamala. Yeah, for knee pads for Cam. I'm sure she's built up like a real sturdy calluses on both of those knees. So she probably thinks that knee pads are for a beginner. But, you know, the thought counts, right? So I appreciate that. And do you have any ideas about what to put on the televisions behind me? They could all play different things if you'd like. We could start with all flags, and then we could move to something else over the course of the show. But folks, the final thing to say here to drive the point home, you got to go free. This is a practice. It's not a group or organization. It's a practice. We do have clubs, and the clubs can be centered on anything. They can be centered on atheism. They could be centered on a specific language. They could be centered on Christianity. They could be centered on football. But the Going Free clubs are places that you use the concepts and you familiarize with the concepts of the practice of going free. That is, as a result, the use of these concepts put us into our story. It forces anti-whites to have to speak to what we are saying, including these most powerful Democrats, to speak to what we are saying in our story. It's already worked and been working for a great many years. Why haven't you heard about it? Because we are the best kept secret in saving Western kind and therefore the United States of America. But it's been a great time with you all here, and I don't see any other. Let me take a quick look at Going Free clubs. Yes, you can decide to join a Going Free club. Elaine says, this is scary, Jason. Thank you. Well, you're most welcome. And let's just scrolling quickly to see if anybody tagged me. Is this Giannis? Meanwhile, on Juneteenth, a TV special will be aired celebrating a excellence of a certain group. I think it's called the Trumpet Awards. No white excellent awards, though. No. They're absolutely not. We have to recapture our destiny if we are going to have any big awards like that. Rest assured. Clips says, sound is good. Thank you for the feedback, and everybody else who may have given feedback. Based in Red Pills says, how do I feel about the I guess you're asking about the community, LGBT community, or individuals? Or we have it's very simple. When it comes to our ideal, we have an ideal man, an ideal woman, and an ideal family. And having those things as an ideal means we strive for the ideal. And some of us will get damn near the ideal, and some of us will fall shorter of the ideal. And as long as we are all striving for the ideal, which is, in my opinion, heterosexual man, a heterosexual woman, and they come together and they have a large, loving family, inoculating the children against anti-whiteism, teaching them to love Western kind, teaching them to love our history and our heritage, preferably of various ethnicities and hues of Western civilization, and mixing as much in as they can, teaching them about all of these different things. And as long as we're all striving for this, proud, members of our countries, patriotic members of our countries, but not putting our countries ahead of our brothers and sisters on the other side of an imaginary line. As long as we're all striving for the ideal, then we can have sympathy for those, including ourselves, who fall short of the ideal. And so that would, of course, be falling short of what we believe the ideal to be. So that doesn't mean that the people are evil or anything of this nature. It's just falling short of the ideal. Now, if you have somebody that is what anti-whiteism has done to, say, like homosexuality, they've turned homosexuality like they've turned being a woman in the West, or at least one born with a vagina. They've turned it into a hammer to destroy Western civilization. And so that we obviously oppose. I think that probably clears it up for you. Thanks for the question. Rory says, do you remember the fake sign language interpreter at President Obama's tribute to Nelson Mandela? I sure do. That was great. The guy had like Tourette's or something. He was wonderful. Artificer says, we got to get rid of this poison, mean pathogen, that rarity equals rarity, ergo something to be cherished. Any ideas? Well, we'll have to come back to that. Rarity equals rarity. Thank you, though, brother. And just jumping through, because we're going to sign out. I hope we did good tonight. Ian said, we should cite Crucible as a testimony of race-based abuse at the hands of a U.S. government institution. Absolutely. Absolutely. That is my true story of my time in junior high school, and coming to grips in terms and metaphorical warfare against anti-whiteism, because it was waged on me. I responded. And when people read it, they, to a man, woman, and child, have said they are shocked to find that that is their story. So you can also find that at Amazon. Crucible, I think I have it right here. Child Patriot American Victory. You can find that at Amazon. You can also get it from NoWhiteGuiltCollectibles.com. And if you get it from there, I will personally sign it. But otherwise, I guess it is appropriate, maybe here to say, because it is kind of late, that I wish you sweet dreams, a good night, and good night, America.